Well, here's one of the greatest lessons I learned about how to use storytelling, particularly when you're dealing with kids. Now, most people think that when you tell stories to kids, it's about having a picture book or maybe doing something really expressive, but there's lots of different ways to engage children through storytelling. So in particular, one back in the day when I was an early childhood educational children's entertainer, so I was a magician called Zeppelina. I used to go into different kindies and I would do these educational interactive magic shows to teach children that kindness makes magic happen. And so I came up with all sorts of stories, amazing stories that were really engaging. And I'd have kids as young as sort of 2, 3, and 4 sitting on the mat engaged for 45 minutes. It was extraordinary. And my mum was a teacher and she always said, often when you're dealing with the naughty kids, it's, often the kids who are wanting to be seen and acknowledged, or, they might come from a family environment where they're not seen and acknowledged. And so they act up as a way to get attention. So even sort of negative attention is just their way of wanting to actually be acknowledged. So this one teacher at this one kindy, she said to me, oh, by the way, before you even start your show, those are the naughty boys, so be careful with them because they'll just act up the whole show. And I thought, well, my mum taught me really well, acknowledge them and make them feel safe and feel okay. So I leant over to the boys and I said, hey, before the show starts, do you want to hear a story? And they're like, yeah. And so we sat down and I said, well, I'm Zeppelina and I'm a magician, and I started telling them this really cool story. And I said, but sometimes when I'm doing magic shows, my nose gets really itchy and I sneeze up carrots, and they thought this was hilarious. And so I said, oh, look, I'm really sorry about that. I'll just pop that away and put it in my pocket. And then I came back and I said, yes, so sometimes when I do these magic stories, oh, it happened again. And so it happened over and over again. And so I said, look, after a while I put away the carrot and I said, oh, look, before the show starts, Zeppelina has to go to the wharepaku, to the bathroom. And this little boy kind of looks at me like this and he goes, Zeppelina? I said, yes. He said, when you go to the bathroom, the wharepaku, when you go there, do carrots come out there too? And it was just the most hilarious thing. And I knew from that moment that these children and I it was so funny. The teachers around me were cracking up. We'd formed this connection and this space of trust. And so those children were amazing. And they were then telling the other kids who were trying to be disruptive to sit down and be quiet. So it just shows you how when you actually make time for people, all sorts of magic can happen. Kia ora.